This week on the Salesforce Admins podcast, we're talking with Jennifer Cole about data strategy and process. Well, yeah, a little something different because in the world of AI and a lot of tools just in general, not to mention automation tools, it's good to know what you're doing with your data and do you have a process in place to make sure you're collecting good data. Also, I ask her about bad data, so that's an interesting answer. But really understanding what data are you collecting, and does everybody know the process for data collection? Because as we know, it's going to be even more important to have great data so that AI can give us even better insights. But if we don't know the process, then, I think we're in trouble. So Jennifer's going to help us with that. But before we get into the episode, just a reminder that if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast, be sure to click the follow button. That way, this podcast can automatically be downloaded right to your device so that when you're out on your dog walk, you don't have to worry about downloading it because it'll already be there. And of course, I always appreciate a good review, so let me know how we're doing. So with that, let's talk process and data quality and maybe data strategies. There's quite a few things in this podcast with Jennifer, and let's get Jennifer on the podcast. So Jen, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks, Mike. I'm really excited to be back.
Well, last time, and I'll put a link in the show notes because you won't hear that 1,000 more times today, but we were talking about documenting your process as an admin when you're solving things.
Yes,
and
good stuff.
I know. I really enjoyed that. I could spend, again, probably another 2 hours doing that because, first of all, I constantly forget, what was I doing here? Why was I should have wrote that down better. But we've since caught up 1,000 other times and wanted to expand on that conversation because with AI, there's so many more shiny tools out there.
There are.
I know, seriously.
A lot.
But I'm getting cart in front of the horse. Let's kind of refresh people about the amount of awesomeness stuff that you work on and what you do in the community. So let's start there.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a director of business intelligence and automation at 908 Devices, which is a super cool title that basically says, I'm still an awesome admin. I'm building apps and supporting my team. I run a team of awesome admins and have recently been able to co-present with one of my awesome admins at the Boston World Tour last, 2 months ago? Wow, time flies.
I know. Yeah.
Oh, so much. Talking about process and data strategy. So that is my sweet spot and what I'm still rocking out at 908.
So I feel like everybody now is paying attention to data with AI. Data. Pay attention to your data, clean your data, wash your data, put your data in a dishwasher.
Give me your data.
Yeah. Cascade is going to have special data tabs here pretty soon. Tide's going to have data pods, right? I'm kidding.
I was going to ask if they were going to be Salesforce branded. That would have been fun. I would have bought those.
Oh, I know, right? But they only work in the cloud.
Mm.
So you'd have to stand outside in the rain.
Yeah.
That wasn't a well thought through joke, so that's okay. Not all of them. You can't have a zinger every single time. But you bring up a good point. So what good is data if you don't know your process?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I don't know that it's helpful if you don't know your process. It's just interesting facts on a screen that maybe make pretty graphs, but what does it tell you if you don't know what questions you're answering?
Yeah. So I guess when in the scheme of things, if we're sitting down and we're looking at our data and we're cleaning our data, we should really take a step back and think about what are we doing with our process? And maybe to your point, and you can expand on this, does everybody know the process? Do you run into a lot of organizations that don't know their process?
Yes.
Or process, I should say. The process. Like there's one.
Can I choose C? All of the above.
C, all of the above.
Yeah, actually quite a few. And I would expect most people assume it's, certain pockets of the organization or those who just aren't doing the day-to-day work. But I don't think that's true. I actually experience people that are doing the day-to-day work don't even fully understand the process or why they're doing what they're doing or what information downstream or upstream their process is being leveraged in. So it's everywhere, honestly. Yeah.
So when you say, because look, we all go to work. People are probably listening to this podcast going to work. Like, I'm going to go to work and send some emails and do work. And they do things. So when you say they don't know the process, what about that do you understand? Is it, there's no like organizational book, or they don't know where the data comes and they don't know what they're shipping out or where it goes?
I think a little bit of both, but if I think about the group of folks I support the largest amount of my time against is the sales organization. They have an objective to make sales, right? They're in sales. It's literally in their title. And for them, they just want to get the job done, right? They want to make a customer happy, they want to book that order, and they want to move on to the next one. And they don't always understand why they have to log an email into Salesforce or why they need to create this next step on their opportunity and who is actually using the application field that they're tagging about their customer. I think they get so, rightfully so, focused on what they're trying to achieve. They don't see the broader picture of where their data is going and how that helps the company refine what they're doing or tweak the customer they want to focus on or tweak how we do things to make them more efficient. So I think in that particular very specific example, they're just so focused on their job, they don't understand why or how it matters.
Yeah. I mean, if they don't understand the step, like you bring up a very good step, right? Like a step in the sales process.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't understand why that step's required and the data they're gathering for that step, then they're less likely to do it, right? They'll just do it in a spreadsheet. And then when the deal's closed, they'll just go in Salesforce and just bang through the opportunity as fast as they can, right?
Right. There's nothing enriching in that. I can't look at a bigger scope of data to understand, geez, a lot of our opportunities close faster when they do a follow-up call, 20 days after X event.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be juicy information to know because then it becomes a feedback loop in the process to say, hey, it looks like you're going to be the odds of closing your deal faster if you do this particular step. But if all of that is being logged outside of the system and we don't know how many follow-up calls there are or face-to-face meetings or customer demos that are taking place, then we can't provide that intel back to help them achieve their goals faster and smarter.
Yeah. So if they're logging, let's say a field, a required field, which is an arbitrary date because they're trying to get through to the closed one, because they think they're following the process, right? Like, but they really did the whole thing out of Salesforce. And then, it's Friday night and the quarter closes and they're trying to get their opportunities in. By not understanding the process, are they then creating bad data?
Oh, bad's a funny word. I would say inaccurate data. I would say data that's going to mislead you. Yeah. So I don't know if yes, there's technically bad data, but in that case, it's not intentionally bad. It's more just inaccurate to the true story. And I think that, that can make it very misleading for the business because they might adjust their workflow based upon the intel they have. And it actually isn't improving anything because nobody was being honest about what they were entering. Right.
Right. So CEO goes to, say, the Boston, we'll use your example, Boston World Tour, and sees the new AI Copilot and Einstein stuff, and maybe wants to use like Einstein next best action. But because they're just putting in arbitrary dates, the new shiny isn't really helping them.
No, it just becomes a very expensive toy. Sorry. But no, it does. It's, it doesn't help them move anything faster, right?
Yeah. I think it's an interesting concept because we always go back to, well, this one thing will just help you do stuff better. But ultimately, before you even look at those things, but what is the process that you're trying to get to? Do you even understand the process, right? Is that kind of where you start with a lot of things?
It's where I start everything. When a person comes for an enhancement or wants to report out on this particular metric or get data to understand what's happening with their business, the question always begins with, well, what questions are you trying to answer? I understand you are asking for this data point, but why? Is it something you're doing today or you're not doing today? And you want to understand how well you are or are not filling that information in or following that process. Because understanding the process for me and my experience and my team's experience helps us serve our customers better. And when I say customer, I mean internal employees in this case, because we're an internal team. We help them achieve so much more when we can get underneath and get to the why. Like understanding their why is what drives bigger change for us, because it often is not just them who need the help or need the change, but actually other people in the organization have that same why. So process is almost like a keystone in the bridge for us. We have to get to it. We have to understand it before we start building across and bridging islands together.
Man, the number of times understanding the why has come up. I should get a shirt that says that.
That'd be a great shirt.
Understand the why. Are there things? So let me dial in specifically for an admin that's listening. Are there things that you build into your application when you create something, let's say for sales or customer service, that helps remind the end user about the why?
Sometimes, yes. Actually, a recent deployment we did was to enable sales to capture who should get automated booking and shipping notifications. And we moved that into Salesforce so that when it replicates over to our ERP, it's auto-fed, right? It's just more accurate. The sales rep knows who should be getting those notices.
Mm-hmm.
And we have those fields there to fill in those addresses. But we did something super simple. We added like a little text bubble, like an actual like text component on the Lightning page that explained what field did what and critical reminders about which field you should fill in and which field you should update this address only. And the feedback we got was, that was great. I need that. That always will remind me because I can never remember what I'm supposed to do or why it matters. And it was just a really simple little text component on the screen.
Right.
So we try to do small things like that where we kind of nudge them through the workflow with those gentle reminders, conditional visibility reminders, anything that helps them in that moment for that particular step in the process to remember the critical reason why it matters helps.
Yeah. I that's really great, because you think about the level of complexity that is getting added to everyone's job, right?
Mm.
And the amount of like you just expect, because I mean I remember as an admin I'd spend 2-3 months with maybe a department or a team working on what their process is and getting their app right in Salesforce, and by the end of it, man, you could have quizzed me Jeopardy level on
Yes.
what was going on with that team and how the data flowed, right? And I'd have nailed it. But 2 months later,
It's
no
gone.
idea. It's gone, right?
What's my
And so
name?
what?
Yes.
I'll take nope, I don't know, hodgepodge for 500, Alex. Um
Yes. Real admin
e-
life.
exactly, because you're like, well, but somehow you just expect to turn that app over to your users and like, oh, I'm sure they'll remember this.
Yes.
I'm going after. So when you're working, creating an app and have those epiphanies, let's add this box that reminds people. How important is it for you, or how important do you feel it is that admins make sure that their users know where the data that they're working on comes from and where it goes?
I think it's actually critical to adoption. Everyone loves to throw this word adoption around, and it's more than just logins. It's actually usability of the system and following the process. And we had a sales meeting was it 2 years ago, a year ago? And we were asked to present as a Salesforce team to the sales team about critical fields they need to fill in. And everyone's done those trainings. They're painful for the salespeople. They're just sitting there. Yep. Okay. I have to fill in the application. Yep. Okay. I have to update my close date. Yep. Okay. And they go through this monotony. But what we found was so successful and an incredible adoption to following the process was when we told them why. We said, okay, when you fill this in, here are the people after you that are using this data. Here's your marketing team and how they're using it to refine the drip campaigns to send to your customers. So if you classify them right, they're going to get special content against their industry or application usage. And we found, Mike, it was the coolest thing. We found in our support channel, we use Slack for issues and questions by the business. People after that sales meeting were just saying, now what if I choose this? And what happens if I choose this? Because they knew who was using the data that they input and where it went, they started to care. And then we just saw greater adoption and questions around, well, what happens if I choose the wrong thing? Can I fix it? And that's a win as an admin in my book, when your business suddenly cares about the data they're putting in.
Yeah, I mean, especially for salespeople, I've found I did an exercise like that where the salespeople went through the call center, and I remember sitting in the break room and kind of the salespeople sitting down with call center agents and like, well, whenever we get this from sales, it says this, and like them sitting there going, well, we fill it out because we think it's this, but those two people had never talked. And the second that they talked, it was like, oh, well, we could 100% get this. And then the customer service agent is like, oh, that would be so helpful, because then when they call in and ask, we don't have to spend 20 minutes looking something up.
It's amazing. It's powerful.
It was the fact that, and I'll take, ownership of this too. It's the fact that when you sit down, sometimes you work at processes at kind of a stage gate level, and you forget, okay, well, I did sales and then sales ends here. Well, sales doesn't end there, right? There's kind of that gray area. And I just didn't bring those groups together. I jumped over to service, and like, obviously everything shipped and it was fine, or then they call, except that gap in between there is the parts you got to work on.
The bridging of the teams. Yeah. And how the data flows between them.
Yeah.
I think that's where the secret sauce is.
I mean, a lot of it is. One of the things, so let's touch on this. Automation has always been huge. And I know we've talked a lot with you about integrations and bringing data over. How does not knowing the process really impact automations?
How much time do we have?
As much time as you'd like.
I think it can have a huge impact on the business in not a good way. I think it could accelerate inaccurate data faster, right? If you don't understand your process and why you're filling in what fields, you could be filling in fields that mean nothing to your business, that mean nothing to you learning how to change your process, adapt your process to better suit your business and your customers. I think it can actually be an unfortunate waste of energy for your admins and money for the organization if you're just don't understand what you want to do and who's doing what and why. And I think of remember the TV show Lost, which is very controversial. No one likes the ending of Lost. But remember
I remember it. I'm one of the few people that never got into it.
Okay, consider yourself lucky.
So I've been told.
You saved so many hours of your life that you've done better things with.
Oh, no, I've wasted them with other TV shows.
Well, I will quickly say for the audience that does know the show, there's a scene or episode where this guy just keeps pressing a red button and he has no idea why. And then he leaves and someone else has to take over pressing this red button. And ultimately, it ends up being, not as critical as anyone might think, but They're just doing it because they were told to do it and they have to do it, but nobody knows why. And I think businesses, if they don't understand their process, are doing the same thing. They're demanding fields to be populated by their users that are never used, that are never actually aggregated to understand if there's value or something to modify an existing workflow or change the direction of how you advertise to customers. They're just pressing red buttons, right? So I think it can be dangerous if you don't understand.
Yeah. So is that perpetuated by the fact that a lot of products and services are sold with, here's the easy way to fix your X?
Short answer, yes. And I understand why that's done. They want to show the ease of use of the tool. But I think the piece that's really hard is we can't get underneath to see how it's built to know if it's going to work for our challenging business problems that we're trying to solve. And what isn't really discussed either is why understanding your strategy, your data strategy is so important and how that tool fits in. I think that's missed. And I don't think that's always understood by the C-suite or the folks that are paying for these tools. They just see this really cool tool like, hey, AI is going to do this for you. I want to be able to do that too. Let's just buy it. But somebody has to understand how it works and somebody has to understand the process so that it actually becomes valuable. It's missed. It's truly, truly missed. And it's hard for admins.
Well, I think you said something that's even bigger than process that I'm realizing now, which is process exists in a world where there is a data strategy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's a
So
piece.
we've probably not sat down. I've never sat down. Have you ever sat down and written a data strategy with an organization?
So written it down, no, it's desperately needed, but it's conversations are a good place to start for
Yeah,
sure.
but it's something that we as a Salesforce admin should think about,
Yes.
because then we can create a world in which process can exist, because data strategy to me tells me we know where the data is going to originate from, how we're going to use it, and what our end goals are. And end goals could be many end points. And then within that data strategy world is where we start to build different processes that take that data and transform it into useful things
Yes.
that the business can then use to make decisions on. So we just haven't sat down and wrote data strategies.
I think so. And I think that's hard day one. My own experience has been the process that was just built over time because somebody needed this field or somebody wanted to do this. There wasn't a broader conversation of, well, who else wants to use this field? And, it's something I need. Do you need it too, Mike?
Right.
Those conversations, I don't think they happen at the beginning because businesses are just trying to get off the ground and they're just trying to get, customers engaged. So we're a little bit backwards in the whole process, but it is critical, I think, for businesses to start and stop. Well, how do I want to say this? They need to stop and think about, we've got all these processes. Do they still make sense? Are they where we want to go? And do they fit into our larger strategy for what data we want to use to navigate the ship of our business? Truly. And so I think, unfortunately, the data strategy doesn't come until after processes are sort of baked in, but hopefully not too solidified that they can't rip them up and start something from scratch if it doesn't fit the strategy they want to achieve.
Right. Yeah, because I'm thinking, early day one, which who knows where people are at, but early day one of a sales process is, how do you get the widget to the customer
Yeah.
as fast as possible, right?
Yeah.
Later stage, day one, as the company matures, how do we efficiently get the widget to the customer and understand our operational challenges?
It's an evolution. Yeah.
We're still shipping, We're still shipping widgets. It's just, why does the widget sit for 6 days at this stage? Is that 6 days lost, or is that 6 days? I don't know, right? And that's where data strategy figures that out, because are we even capturing that data to make that decision, to figure that stuff out? And if not, then we need to start doing that.
Yes. And it makes me think about how I'm hearing more in the community, which very much excites me, of reverse thinking. Well, what do you want to measure? Okay, let's go backwards and figure out, do you even have the fields to start measuring it? And are you measuring it because you're curious, or are you measuring it because it's something you want to bake into your workflow and your process there? And so I'm excited to hear more in the community of folks starting to think about this reverse modeling of, well, we want to understand, what our customers are doing with our widgets. Now that they're using them, we're super excited. We've got this customer base, but should we start to target certain types of customers? Well, what are they doing with our widgets? Okay, great question. Are you set up to even track that? And what do you need in order to start tracking it? And then who's going to fill it in? And do they know why they're filling it in? That whole reverse model. So that's an exciting shift that I'm hearing more of in the industry and fellow admins to support that data strategy. But I think you're right. That next step is really sitting down to define on paper what that strategy is, and then communicating it to everyone in the organization, at every level of the organization, because that just goes back to the why. When folks understand the why, they get excited. They want to help.
Yeah. When looking at, so a flip back and forth. So then, you sit down, you look at process, you think of data strategy. When looking at tools, what are some things that admins shouldn't be afraid to ask, or should really kind of get behind and kind of get their hands dirty looking at?
Oh, thank you for the question. I think it's setup. As a customer of Salesforce, you're poor sales reps. I'm tough because I always want to see what's underneath. Like, don't give me the shiny YouTube video. Like, I want to let me play with it. Let me get in there. So I would love for fellow admins to be just as precocious and try to go into setup. Let me physically see my options. And that's super cool what you just showed me, but how did you set it up? Let me in your demo org. And Salesforce demo orgs are incredible, like what your solution engineers build and play with and what's in there. Ask admins, ask for a sneak peek, because you, as an admin, not only need to understand how your business would apply the tool, but you need to understand how it works and how it can scale to solve all the crazy problems that you'll come across. Because in a way, you've got to sell it to your business. Admins are diverse. They're builders, and they're also salespeople, internal salespeople to their own executive suite. So I would encourage them to say, show me how it's made, right?
Yeah, I mean, I also, as an admin, liked showing my users, if they wanted to see it, how I made the app.
Yes.
Or parts of it that, say sales, for example, if they asked, well, what happens if we add a step here? Well, then I can just go click, click, boom. And now that new step shows up in path and shows up in, the opportunity. And it kind of lets them know two things. One, I understand the value of being agile and changing, because if we're working on a new process, we've got to be ready to, hey, this really isn't working despite what we thought it would do on paper.
Yeah.
And also, two, when we get to that point, you need to know I have the skill to change the application at the speed of business.
Yes.
So that we can make that adjustment and keep moving forward.
Yes. Fully agree. And it's interesting too, because even my user population loves to see under the hood, even though they're never going to use it. Oh, they love it when they like to see those changes on the fly that you were just speaking to. Like, yeah, I do know how to manage this application. I do know how to customize it. I can improve it for you. When we do on-demand changes for them, in a meeting when we're getting app feedback or process feedback that we've implemented in Salesforce, they just think it's so much fun. Number one, they gain a lot more confidence in the team, right? Because they're seeing something happen real time. But number two, they themselves love to see it and enjoy how quickly we can support the business. And also it allows them to understand when sometimes it takes us more time because it's more complicated, there's a better understanding. So totally diverging topics on you, but yeah, users
No,
love
but
it too.
I mean, it's, getting behind the scenes, which is digging into process and digging into data strategies. Follow up to that, do you regularly share that? And would you recommend admins regularly do that as well?
Yes, I would actually. And it's funny, as an admin, we're often tagged as being a tiny bit controlling in our orgs and, love everything to be precise and buttoned up. But I think it actually gains business trust when we crack open the org and set up for them and they can see how we click around. Because there's no risk. If someone wants to join the admin team and they're that curious and inspired by what they see in setup, oh my gosh, come on over. But in the same breath, admins can gain so much trust, I feel, from their business when they expose what they're doing. Because if you think about it, admins are going into the business every day and saying, show me your process. How are you doing it? Let me see what you're doing. We're putting our business under the microscope to improve it. I don't think there's any harm in the reverse. It just helps build that mutual trust and relationship of sharing how to build something and what the possibilities are or are not. And I encourage it. I think it'd be great. Actually, I encourage my team to do it. They do it in front of our users all the time, and it's been a positive experience.
Well, I can't think of a better way to wrap up the conversation than having brought it completely back around on us, where we're being as transparent with our process as we're asking the business to be with us while we create the technology to support it. So thanks for coming back on the pod and sharing your thoughts on this and giving us data strategies to work on.
Thanks, Mike. It was really
I'm
great.
Excited.
Me too. I'm excited to see what those admins do. Have fun out there.
Well, I don't know about you, but I was thinking of 1,000 different times that I needed to have a conversation between different departments so that they understood the importance of putting fields in. And really, it was interesting after the call, Jennifer and I talked a little bit because so much of what we do when we sit down with our users is, well, how are we going to document this? What are we going to put in Salesforce? And we get wrapped up with what we're going to put in Salesforce, which we should, but we forget to talk of why. And that came up in this conversation is, why are we putting this down? Why is this a critical stage? Why is it critical that we capture this data at this point? And then who's going to do something with it to make us a better organization? It's not, in talking sales, it's not just shipping out the widget as fast as we can, but maybe as efficiently as we can and understanding different parts of our organization so that we can capture data. And I got to agree with Jennifer. Boy, it was such a good point. Having all of your users understand where the data is coming from and where the data that they create goes, where in the process they sit, and having those individuals meet with each other. I think that was such a great insight that Jennifer brought to this episode. So I hope you enjoyed listening to it. And of course, if you did, you can share it with your friends. Just go ahead and click on those 3 dots. There's usually 3 dots in just about every application now. And you can share it on social. I would so appreciate that. And if you're looking for resources or anything that we mentioned in the episode itself, show notes are right there. They're also on our website, admin.salesforce.com, which has got everything you need to read, blog posts, other podcasts you can listen to, and a transcript of this show. And of course, you can join the conversation in the Admin Trailblazer group, which is in the Trailblazer community. That is also a link in the show notes. A lot of people talking data quality and process there too. All right. So until next week, we'll see you in the cloud.